I'm going to be going over my dream hangar. This is the hangar that I think is the best in the game. Watch to find out what it is. And if you do enjoy the video, consider liking and subscribing. I'd appreciate it a ton. So this is my dream hangar. This is the hangar I use for every map and mode. It's such a strong hangar. So my first build is Surge with railgun 12s. The implants I'm using is railgun damage, railgun reload, surge dash distance, and the ability cooldown implant. I used to use Surge with EM Rifle 12s, but now I've switched over to Surge with Railgun 12s. This is such a strong build. I like it better than Surge EMs. The main reason I like Surge Rails better is because it does better against enemy disc launchers. The railguns have instant fire, so if the enemy disc launcher mech peeks out even a bit, you can snipe them. But with Surge EM, since there's a delay, it's extremely hard to hit the enemy disc launcher mech. And I also really love how aggressive you can be with Surge Rails. You can dash at the enemy, stun them, go behind them, and kill them. So I think Surge Rails is better than Surge EMs against players, but against bots, Surge EMs is better. The EMs deal way more damage and do much better against bots. Surge Rails struggles against the bots because of its low damage. Killing those bot bastions is a nightmare. This is the build I usually start with in CPC. The way I use this build is I use my dash to get into a good position and then snipe the enemies from there. I usually use this build pretty passively and snipe, but if the enemy gets close to me, I'll stun them and kill them. The next build I'm using is Panther with Disc Launcher 16s. The implants I'm using are the Disc Launcher damage, Disc Launcher reload, Disc Launcher radius, and the ability cooldown implant. I absolutely love this build. It's such a strong build. I use this build really aggressively. I put down my barrier, walk forward and shoot enemies, and then when my barrier is about to expire, I run back and hide again. And when I'm hiding, I like to wall peek with my disc launchers. But you have to be careful because if you expose yourself too much, you'll get sniped. And then once my ability's cooldown is over, I repeat the process again. I like spawning this build second in CPC. Once my Surge Rails dies, I spawn this build and kill anyone who's near the center beacon. This is one of my favorite builds and I can't live without it. The next build I'm using is Bastion with Disc Launcher 12s. The implants I'm using is the Disc Launcher damage, Disc Launcher reload, Disc Launcher radius, and the ability cooldown implant. This is an absolute beast of a build. I know a lot of people use Surge with Disc Launcher 12s instead. It's also a super strong build, but I like this build much better. This build wrecks Surge with Disc Launcher 12s. It also wrecks every other Disc Launcher build in the game. If you use this build right, it's almost unstoppable. The way I use this build is I use it pretty passively. I find a good place to hide behind and I camp there and splash the enemies to death. If an enemy's firing at me with snipers, I wall peek at them so they can't snipe me, but otherwise I'll walk around and splash the enemy to death with both of my disc launchers. On CPC, I really like to spawn in the center beacon with this build. If we've captured the center beacon, I spawn on my bastion disc and easily defend it against enemies. He's an absolute beast at defending beacons. You can wreck any enemy that tries capturing the center beacon with your disc launchers, and you can stun them if they get too close. A lot of people are using Surge or Eclipse discs, but I can't live without my Bastion discs. The next build I'm using is Eclipse with EM Rifle 16 plus 8. Using EM Rifle 16 plus 8 is super important. EM Rifle 16 plus 8 is much better than dual EM Rifle 12s. As you can see here, the EM Rifle 16 plus 8 has a low of 264,000, which is the pink, and it has a high of 330,000, which is the gold. The dual EM Rifle 12s, on the other hand, will deal a consistent 297,000 damage. So the EM Rifle 16 plus 8 has a much higher chance of one-shotting Gatecrasher and Aegis. Even if the EM Rifle 8 doesn't get the double damage, you'll still one-shot the Gatecrasher or Aegis with the EM Rifle 16. And even if you don't get the double damage with the EM Rifle 16, it's not too bad since you'll only not one-shot Sentinel, Onyx, and they're not really meta mechs. But with the dual EM Rifle 12s, you need both EMs to get double damage to one-shot the Gatecrasher or Aegis. And the EM Rifle 16 plus 8 is also better against Bastions. You can use the EM Rifle 8 to take down the Bastion's shield and then deal a ton of damage with the EM Rifle 16. So definitely use the EM Rifle 16 plus 8, it's a much better option. And the implants I'm using are the EM Rifle damage, EM Rifle reload, EM Rifle range, and the ability cooldown implant. Eclipse EMs is just such a strong build. I love it so much. I use this build really passively. I find a good spot to snipe, I wall peek, and I snipe enemies to death. And even though you're standing still, the stealth still helps a ton. A lot of times the enemy doesn't know that you're hiding there, so you can catch them off guard and snipe them. I also really like sneaking up on enemies. If an enemy knows I'm there, I like going from a different route and sneaking up on them and killing them. Eclipse EMs is such a strong and sneaky build. And the last build I'm using is Aegis with dual rocket mortar 12s. The implants I'm using are the rocket mortar damage, rocket mortar radius, ability duration, and the ability cooldown implant. I like this build much better than all the other rocket mortar builds. The reason for this is that with other rocket mortar builds, you can't really help your team out. All you can do is stand still and kill enemies. But with this build, you can help your team out as well. You can use your dome to provide cover for your teammates from rocket mortars and snipers, and you can also use your dome to capture beacons as well. If the coast is clear for the center beacon, I can run up to the center beacon, put down my dome, and capture it. And I like playing this build really aggressively. I like getting close to enemies and firing at them with the rocket mortars to guarantee myself the kill. If you get close to enemies and fire your rocket mortars, it's almost impossible for them to escape. And since you have the dome to protect yourself, you can afford to play aggressively. So this is the hangar I use for custom matches against players. If I'm playing myself against bots, I replace Aegis mortars with Orion EMs. This is a really strong bot killing build. Mortars aren't really that great for when you're playing by yourself. They're more of a weapon that you use for team fights. I really like Orion EMs since it wrecks those bastion bots. Those bastion bots are really annoying to deal with, and you can just one-shot them with Orion EMs. I also sometimes replace Orion EMs with Redeemer EMs. It's also a super strong build that I like a lot. So that was my dream hangar. These are going to be the builds I'm going to use once the implant discount removal is gone. So copy my builds if you want. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe, and see you guys.